Destiny Williams was sitting on the edge of a bed that cost more per night than she made in 2 weeks of teaching, wearing a dress that had made her mother weep when she first tried it on, with her phone in her hand, and exactly 1 hour before she was supposed to walk down an aisle toward a man who had just shown her in a hotel stairwell 6 minutes ago. Exactly who he had always been underneath the charming smile and the tailored suit. The bridal suite was immaculate. Morning light the color of warm honey streaming through sheer curtains. White roses arranged in crystal vases on every available surface. A bottle of champagne sitting untouched in a silver ice bucket. The kind of room that exists specifically to make a woman feel like a princess on what is supposed to be the happiest day of her life. And Destiny sat in the middle of all that manufactured perfection and felt like the walls were slowly pressing inward, stealing the air from her lungs one breath at a time. Her phone was clutched in her trembling hand. Her contacts list was full of names. 275 people were already finding their seats in a garden 1 floor below, adjusting their summer hats and complimenting each other's outfits. Her mother was probably in the room next door, dabbing at her eyes and telling anyone who would listen how proud she was. Her sister Imani was probably smoothing down her bridesmaid dress and practicing her smile in the mirror. Her maid of honor was probably triple-checking the timeline with the wedding coordinator. And every single one of those people, every name Destiny scrolled past, was someone Marcus Whitfield could reach, could threaten, could destroy before the reception champagne was even poured. She knew this with absolute certainty because he had told her so, specifically, calmly, methodically, in a stairwell, 6 minutes ago. She scrolled past her mother's name. She scrolled past Imani. She scrolled past her best friend from college, past her cousins, past every name that represented someone who could become collateral damage the moment Marcus realized she had reached out for help. She kept scrolling, past everyone who made sense, past everyone who was safe, past everyone who could be weaponized against her in Marcus's perfectly calibrated game. Her thumb stopped on a name she had not spoken out loud in 13 years. A name saved under a single letter. J. She stared at it for a long moment, longer than she should have, given that she only had 1 hour. But some decisions require a moment of stillness before the leap, even when the building is already burning. Then she typed 7 words. "Come now, if you still want me." She stared at those words glowing on her screen. 7 words. The echo of a rooftop. The echo of a promise made by 2 teenagers on a summer night in Chicago who had no earthly idea what the world was about to do to them. She hit send. She placed the phone face down on the white duvet, carefully, deliberately, like she was setting down something that might detonate if handled incorrectly. And then she pressed her palms flat against her eyes and sat perfectly still in the center of the most expensive, most beautiful, most meticulously arranged trap she had ever walked into. 53 minutes away by road, 11 minutes by air, in a glass-walled office 47 floors above the Chicago skyline, where a meeting involving $62 million had been in progress for the past 90 minutes. A man most people in this city knew only by reputation and whispered rumor looked down at his phone. The notification had interrupted a sentence. He had been speaking. Now he was not. He read the message once. 13 years collapsed into 7 words. He read it again. He stood up from the conference table without a word of explanation, without an apology, without any acknowledgement of the $62 million, or the 11 men in expensive suits who had gone completely silent to watch him rise. He simply stood the way a man stands when a decision was made long ago and the body is finally being given permission to execute it. Every person in that room watched him walk toward the door. Not one of them asked where he was going. not one of them would have dared. His second in command was waiting in the corridor, already falling into step beside him before Jwan had fully cleared the doorway. "The helicopter," Jwan Park said. That was all. 2 words, and then he was moving, his stride eating up the marble corridor with the focused efficiency of a man who has somewhere to be and will not be delayed. "Where?" his second asked. Jwan looked at him with an expression that communicated, with perfect clarity, that the question had been unnecessary. And then, he was gone. Destiny had no idea what she had just set in motion. Neither did Marcus Whitfield, who was currently in his groom's suite, adjusting his cufflinks and rehearsing his vows with the practiced ease of a man who had never lost at anything in his life, and saw no reason why today should be different. Neither did the 275 guests settling into their white chairs in a garden that had cost more to decorate than Destiny's annual teaching salary, listening to a string quartet play something elegant and appropriately romantic, with absolutely no reason to suspect that the most memorable moment of this wedding would have nothing to do with the vows, the rings, or the kiss. But to understand what happened in that garden, the helicopter, the silence that swallowed 275 gasps, the moment a bride in a $12,000 dress dropped her bouquet and walked toward a man who was not the groom, you have to go back. You have to understand what happened on a rooftop 13 years earlier, between 2 teenagers who made a promise they had absolutely no business making. Let's go back to the beginning. Destiny Williams grew up on the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood called Auburn Gresham, where everybody knew everybody's business and politely pretended they didn't, where the corner store owner extended credit to people he had personally decided to like and not a single dollar to anyone else, where the block had its own unwritten rules, its own silent agreements, its own grammar that you either learned by living it or you didn't learn at all. She was the kind of person people noticed without being able to articulate exactly why. Not because she was loud or demanded attention. She never did either of those things. Because she moved through the world with a warmth so genuine and so specific that people felt it before she even opened her mouth. Like walking into a room where someone had just been baking bread. She was the girl who stayed after school every Thursday to help Mr. Patterson, the janitor, stack chairs in the cafeteria because she had noticed, without anyone telling her, that he limped on Thursdays and the work went slower those days. She was the girl who spent an entire weekend learning 4 phrases in Vietnamese because a new student named Lynn arrived looking terrified on her first day, and Destiny had decided, unilaterally and without consulting anyone, yes, that Lynn was going to have at least one friend by the time lunch period rolled around. She made Lynn laugh before second period ended. They sat together every day for the rest of that year and the 3 years after. She painted. Not as a hobby, not as something to put on college applications, not as a creative outlet in the way adults talked about creative outlets when they wanted teenagers to have healthy coping mechanisms, as a language. Her first language, the one she trusted more than words. When something was too big for sentences, too complicated for conversation, too heavy to carry in the normal ways people carried things, she put it on canvas or on walls or on the back of a grocery receipt and let the colors carry what her mouth couldn't hold. Her bedroom walls were covered in things she had felt and translated into pigment and brushstroke. Her mother, Patricia, called it Destiny's emotional weather report and checked it every few days the way other mothers checked diaries or text messages. She was, in the truest and least performed sense of the word, a person built for connection, for love, for the kind of warm, grounded, real-world tenderness that made other people feel like they belonged somewhere, like the world had a place specifically shaped for them. And she carried, in the quiet place she didn't look at too often, because looking hurt in ways she had never quite figured out how to name, the specific loneliness of someone surrounded by people who loved her and yet unable to find, in any of those connections, any of the particular frequency she had felt once and lost, and never quite located again. She had a name for that frequency once. She had stopped using it years ago, but it was still there, quiet, patient, waiting in the place she didn't examine. Jwan Park arrived on the block in September, 3 weeks into Destiny's junior year of high school, placed with the Morrison family 4 doors down from the Williams house, after a series of events that no 17-year-old should ever have to carry, and that he carried anyway because no one had given him any other option. His mother, Sue Min, had worked 2 jobs for as long as Jwan could remember. Dry cleaning 6 days a week, the steam and chemical smell permanently embedded in her clothes. Restaurant kitchen 5 nights a week, the burns on her forearms telling their own silent story. Oh, weekends whenever someone needed coverage, which was always, because there was always someone who needed coverage, and she never said no. She was the kind of woman who kept an entire world intact through sheer force of will, through double shifts and careful budgeting, and the specific quiet heroism of a mother who never once complained, because complaining would have meant admitting the load was too heavy. And she had decided long ago that it wasn't, that she could carry it, that she would. She carried it until her body made a different choice. Hospitalized in March with something the doctors kept using complicated words to describe. Deported in April while she was still trying to understand those complicated words. Dead in soul by June, in a country she hadn't lived in for 19 years, away from her son, away from everything she had built, away from the only life that had mattered to her. 3 months, an entire universe collapsed. Jwan was left standing in the empty space where their life together used to be. 17 years old with nowhere to go and no one left who remembered his mother's laugh, or the way she hummed while she cooked, or the specific way she said his name when she was proud of him, which was often, which was always. He spoke English carefully, precisely, like each word cost him something, and he was monitoring the expense. He kept to himself with the practiced discipline of someone who had learned, not from books or advice, but from direct and repeated experience, that getting close to things meant being present when they disappeared. And he had been present enough times now to know that he was done paying that particular price. His grief had bent his posture and put something old and watchful behind his eyes that had no business living in a teenager's face. He looked like someone who had already seen enough of the world to have stopped expecting anything good from it and had made a quiet, permanent, unshakable peace with that expectation. He sat on the Morrison family's front porch every evening that first week, not waiting for anything, not hoping for anything, just sitting with the particular stillness of a person who has run out of places to go and has stopped pretending otherwise. Destiny saw him on a Wednesday. The September light was doing that golden thing it does in Chicago when summer is dying, but hasn't quite admitted it yet. She was walking home from school, backpack over one shoulder, earbuds in, not paying particular attention to anything. And then she saw him, sitting on that porch with his shoulders curved inward and his eyes fixed on nothing, and the kind of stillness that isn't peaceful, but exhausted. She didn't wave from across the street. She didn't call out an introduction. She turned around, walked the 4 blocks back to her house, and emerged 15 minutes later with a plate covered in aluminum foil. Her mother's jollof rice, because that was what Patricia Williams had taught her daughters to do when words felt insufficient. You lead with food. You let everything else follow at its own pace. She walked up the Morrisons' front steps without waiting for an invitation and sat down next to him on the porch swing, close enough that their shoulders were almost touching. He looked at the plate. He looked at her. He looked back at the plate with the expression of a person trying to find the hidden cost in a free thing and coming up completely empty. She watched him search. "It's going to get cold," she said, with the kind of matter-of-fact warmth that came as naturally to her as breathing. "If you keep looking at it like it's about to explain itself." He laughed. Short, sudden, completely involuntary. The kind of laugh that escapes before the defenses can organize a response, that comes from somewhere below the conscious mind, from whatever part of the body keeps running independently of all the walls the brain has assembled. He looked almost startled by the sound, like he had forgotten that his body knew how to make it. Like laughter was a reflex that had gone dormant, and something about this girl and this plate of rice and this completely unsolicited act of warmth had tripped it before he could stop it. That laugh, that small, startled, unguarded sound, that was where everything started. Right there on that porch, with a plate of jollof rice going warm in the September air, and a girl who had decided, without any particular reason or logic, that this boy was going to have at least one friend on this block, whether he wanted one or not. Within 3 weeks, they were inseparable in the way that only happens when you are young and searching, consciously or not, for the one person who makes the enormous, confusing, overwhelming world feel like the right size. She taught him the neighborhood, not just the geography, the street names and the shortcuts and the fastest routes to school. The grammar, the unwritten rules, which faces you trusted completely and which ones you trusted carefully. Which corners you didn't cut through after the streetlights came on, and exactly why. The bodega owner 6 blocks east who extended credit only to people he had personally decided were good people, and the specific, delicate, almost ceremonial art of getting him to decide you were good people. She translated Auburn Gresham for him the way a guide translates a foreign country. Not just the landmarks, but the meaning underneath the landmarks. Not just the rules, but the reasons underneath the rules. He taught her Korean in return. They sat at her mother's kitchen table 3 or 4 evenings a week, sheets of paper spread between them. A Korean English dictionary that Jwan had found at a used bookstore slowly falling apart from overuse. She destroyed his native vowels with a cheerful, spectacular, almost aggressive disregard for accuracy that made him laugh so hard he had to put his forehead down on the table and stay there until he could breathe again. She noticed what made him laugh, started collecting the information like precious data, started making mistakes on purpose, strategically, creatively, with increasing commitment to the bit, just to keep that sound alive in the room a little longer. Sarange became sarang, hi became sa, wrong, hi became something so far from Korean that Jwan laughed until there were tears on his face, and Destiny sat there grinning like she had won something important, which she had. Patricia Williams fed him like he already belonged there, like he had always belonged there. Without ceremony, without making it a thing, without any of the awkwardness that usually comes with a new person in a kitchen that has its own rhythms. Just an extra plate at the table, an extra chair pulled up, a container of food pressed into his hands when he left for the evening. The way some people love, quietly, consistently, through the simple radical act of feeding someone. Imani, Destiny's little sister, 11 years old, and entirely without social filters of any kind, announced within 2 weeks of meeting Jwan that he was her favorite person on the entire block, and told him so directly, to his face, in front of everyone, with the unshakable confidence of a child who has never considered that her opinions might be unwelcome. He looked, in that moment, like a person who had never been told he was anyone's favorite anything. Like the information didn't have a place to land in his understanding of himself. Like kindness was a language he understood theoretically, but hadn't heard spoken directly to him in so long that hearing it now required a moment of recalibration. He fit into that household the way water fits into a glass. Without announcement, without negotiation, without any of the friction that usually comes with new configurations, as if the space had been shaped for him all along and had simply been waiting patiently for the specific dimensions of him to arrive and fill it. For Destiny, Jwan was the first person she had ever chosen entirely on instinct. Not because he was convenient or uncomplicated or easy. He was none of those things. Because something deep and wordless in her had recognized something deep and wordless in him. The way you suddenly understand a word in a language you didn't know you'd been learning all along. For Jwan, Destiny and that kitchen table, and Patricia's cooking, and Amani's unfiltered adoration were the first experience he had ever had of home that didn't come with conditions attached. Of being known, fully and warmly and easily, by people who wanted nothing from the knowing except to keep knowing. They were each other's first real understanding of what it means to choose someone completely. Not because you have to, not because it's practical, because something in you looks at something in them and says, yes, that, I choose that. On the 4th of July, the summer they were both 17, they climbed up the fire escape to the roof of Destiny's building as the sky above the south side began to do what Chicago sky does every Independence Day, cracking open in colors and thunder and the particular beautiful chaos of a city celebrating itself. They sat with their legs dangling over the edge, shoulders touching, the neighborhood spreading out beneath them in every direction, and they were above all of it. Two teenagers on a warm night who were, in every way that actually mattered, exactly where they were supposed to be. The sky fractured in reds and golds and blues. Down below, someone was playing Frankie Beverly too loud, which was the only appropriate volume for Frankie Beverly. Somewhere further away, now children were screaming with the particular joy of children who are still awake past midnight and know they're getting away with something. Jwan spoke first. His voice carried the particular gravity of someone who already understood, not from poetry, not from movies, but from lived experience, that loss was not a metaphor. That it was a thing that happened on a regular Tuesday and didn't send advance notice and didn't care if you were ready. If life ever puts us somewhere the other one can't follow, he said, and he was looking at the fractured sky when he said it. Not at her, because some things are easier to say to the universe than to a face. Just say the word. I'll come back, no matter what, no matter where, no matter how long it takes. Destiny turned her head and looked at his profile against the explosions of color. The jaw that was still more boy than man. The eyes that were already carrying weight no boy should have to carry. The hands resting on the roof edge, finally, in this moment, in this place, with this person, not braced for anything. Same, she said, simply, completely. No questions, no hesitation, just come. They were 17. They meant every syllable with everything they had. The world had not yet shown them what promises like that actually cost, the distance they had to travel, the years they had to survive, the specific grinding weight of reality that pressed against them every single day. They remained unkept. But they made them. On that roof, under that fractured sky. Two teenagers with everything ahead of them, and no idea what ahead of them actually meant. Jwan reached over and took her hand. She let him, and for a long moment, they just sat there, hands intertwined, watching the sky remember how to be dark again. He was gone before she woke up on a Thursday morning in November, 13 months later. No note slipped under her door. no voicemail on her phone. No goodbye folded into a paper crane or hidden in the pages of the Korean workbook they had been using. No warning of any kind. Just gone. The way something disappears between one breath and the next. And you don't understand yet that it's gone because gone hasn't registered as a permanent condition. It still feels like a temporary one, like a mistake, like something that will correct itself if you just wait long enough. The Morrison family delivered the explanation with their eyes carefully, considerately directed somewhere past her left shoulder. The way people talk when they're repeating words they've been given rather than words they've chosen. He had to go back to Seoul. Family situation. Very sudden. Very sorry. The words felt rehearsed in a way Destiny couldn't quite name, but couldn't ignore either. She called his number that evening. Dead. She called again the next morning. Dead. She called 4 more times over the following week, punching in the numbers she had memorized so long ago she couldn't remember ever not knowing them. Dead every single time. The line that had connected to him simply didn't connect to anything anymore, as if it had been cut deliberately, surgically, with intention. She wrote him a letter. To an address she spent 3 weeks excavating through late-night internet searches and awkward conversations with the Morrison family, and fragmentary pieces of information assembled like a puzzle, missing most of its pieces. She spent 4 nights on that letter. Wrote it and rewrote it. Crossed things out and wrote them again. Put everything onto those pages. Everything she hadn't said because she'd assumed she'd have time. Because she'd assumed he would be there. Because she'd assumed so many things that turned out to be wrong. She mailed it with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She checked the mailbox every day for 2 months. Nothing came back. At some point, she stopped checking, and she built the only story the evidence would support. He left. Whatever she had been to him hadn't been enough to make him stay. The rooftop promise had been what promises made by teenagers almost always are. Genuine in the moment, real in the moment, beautiful in the moment, and completely unable to survive the actual weight of the actual world. She grieved. It was the particular grief of losing someone who chose to leave, which is sharper in certain places than grief for the dead and duller in others, and considerably harder to explain to anyone who hasn't felt it, because there's no funeral, no casket, no socially recognized container for the loss of someone who is still alive and simply chose not to be in your life anymore. People said things like, "At least you're young, and you'll meet someone else, and everything happens for a reason," and they meant well, and they were completely, utterly, spectacularly useless. Destiny grieved in the ways she knew how. She painted walls in colors so dark her mother started checking on her more often. She stopped laughing for a while, and when she started again, the laugh was different, more careful, less automatic, and then, eventually, she did what people who are built for survival do. She rebuilt. She finished high school, finished college, got her teaching certificate and a job at a public elementary school on the South Side, the kind of job that people who love children and believe in something larger than themselves choose, not the kind that happens by accident. She painted murals on school hallway walls, large, vivid, breathing things in colors so alive that children stopped mid-run to look up at them with their mouths open. She became the teacher students came back to visit years later. Standing awkwardly in her classroom doorway, had grown in ways they couldn't articulate, wanting to tell her she had mattered. She was whole. She was functional. She was, by every visible and honest measure, genuinely good at her life. She was not, in the place she didn't examine too carefully, entirely over a boy on a rooftop who had promised to come back and hadn't. She kept his number in her phone, not because she expected anything from it, not because she believed it still connected to anything real. Because deleting it felt like a different, final kind of loss. The kind you couldn't undo, and she had never been able to bring herself to that particular edge. The number sat in her contacts under a single letter, J, for 13 years. Marcus Whitfield walked into her life at a charity gala on a Friday evening in October. The kind of event where everyone is wearing something expensive and pretending they're there for the cause, rather than the networking. He was 41, polished in a way that looked effortless but wasn't. Established in Chicago in the particular way that made him appear simultaneously powerful and principled, which is a very specific combination that very few people manage, and even fewer manage honestly. Senior partner at one of the city's most respected real estate development firms. The kind with affordable housing initiatives on the front page of the website and photos of Marcus at ribbon-cutting ceremonies for community centers. Because a man like Marcus understood exactly what that imagery communicated and exactly what it cost him, which was very little, and exactly what it bought him, which was considerable. Board seats at 2 nonprofits. A reputation in the Black professional community that had been assembled over 15 years with the patience and precision of a man who understood that credibility was architecture, not accident. Every brick placed with intention, every relationship cultivated with care, every public appearance calculated to reinforce the image of a man whose integrity was as solid as his investment portfolio. He pursued destiny with patience, never too much, never so much that it felt like pressure. Always calibrated to stay just below the threshold where flattering attention becomes uncomfortable attention. He remembered details she mentioned once in passing and referenced them weeks later in ways that made her feel seen. He asked about her students by name. He showed up when he said he would. He called when he said he would. He met her parents within 4 months. He sat in Patricia Williams' living room, complimented the jollof rice with the specificity of someone who had actually tasted it rather than performed the tasting of it, and made Raymond Williams laugh within 12 minutes. This was significant. Destiny's father did not laugh easily. He had spent 40 years in a city that rewarded people who could read the difference between a man who was performing goodness and a man who actually possessed it, and he had developed, through those 40 years, a built-in detector for that distinction that had never, in Destiny's experience of watching it operate, failed. She watched Marcus pass that test. She felt something careful and guarded inside her begin, slowly, to consider opening. She was careful with him. The way a woman who has genuinely loved and genuinely lost tends to be careful with everything that comes after, measuring it at a slight distance, assessing its actual weight before allowing it to bear any of hers. But he was consistent. He showed up. He called when he said he would. He remembered. He did not disappear. He did not disappear. 3 words sitting inside a sentence about Marcus Whitfield's virtues. And if you read those 3 words carefully, if you feel what's underneath them, you understand exactly what Destiny was actually choosing when she chose this man. She wasn't choosing Marcus for who he was. She was choosing him for who he wasn't. He wasn't Jwan. He wasn't the boy who left. He was proof, she told herself, that people could stay. That love didn't always end with a dead phone line and a letter that never got answered. 2 years in, he proposed in her mother's living room on a Sunday afternoon in September, with her whole family present and her mother already crying before Destiny had even processed the question. Patricia Williams had been carrying the hope of this moment for her daughter for so long that the arrival of it released something in her that had been held tight for years. Destiny said yes. She told herself it was love, And she was almost entirely right, in the devastating way that a person can feel something genuinely real that is resting, at its very foundation, on a lie she doesn't know is there. Because what Destiny did not know, could not have known. Because Marcus had built the entire architecture of their relationship specifically to prevent her from knowing, was that Marcus Whitfield was not who he appeared to be. The cracks had been there. In retrospect, she would see them with painful clarity. The phone that quietly excused itself from certain rooms. The business trips that extended by a day with explanations that were always reasonable. The warmth in his face that could, in certain unguarded moments, click off and on so fast she almost missed it. Almost. She had filed all of it in the back of her mind under the heading, "Nobody's perfect," and moved on. Because he had given her every reason to trust him, and no reason to look harder. That was the point. That had always been the point. The email arrived on the morning of the wedding. 6:23 a.m. No subject line. An address she didn't recognize. A string of random letters and numbers at a free email service. 2 attachments. Nothing else. She almost deleted it. Her thumb was already moving toward the swipe, the automatic gesture of someone clearing spam from their inbox on the busiest morning of their life. She had vendor confirmations to review and timeline updates to approve, and her makeup artist was arriving in 40 minutes. Something stopped her thumb. She didn't know what, couldn't name it, wouldn't have been able to explain it if someone had asked. She clicked. The photographs loaded slowly. The way photographs sometimes do, building themselves line by line as if they understand that some images require the courtesy of a warning. Marcus. She recognized him immediately. Wearing a shirt she recognized, casual and relaxed. The Marcus of private moments rather than public ones. A woman. Beautiful and unfamiliar. Someone Destiny had never seen, never heard mentioned, never encountered in any form in 2 years of what she had believed was a fully shared life. The woman was sitting close to Marcus. Not politely close. Not the proximity of colleagues or old friends or any of the innocent configurations that could be explained away. Intimately close. The body language of someone who belonged exactly where she was and had belonged there for a long time. A child on Marcus's lap. A little girl, maybe 2 years old, with Marcus's exact eyes, being held with the natural, automatic ease of a man who had held this child hundreds of times. Not posed for a photograph. Not stiff with the awareness of a camera. Comfortable. Familiar. Known. The timestamp in the corner said 8 months ago. 5 months into Destiny's engagement. She sat with those photographs for a very long time. She turned them over in her mind the way you turn a broken thing in your hands, slowly, carefully, looking for the angle where it isn't broken. Where context exists, where an explanation emerges that makes this something other than exactly what it obviously is. There was no angle, there was no explanation. And then the memories started replaying. Not as memories anymore, as evidence. The phone leaving the room, the business trips, the warmth switching off like a light behind his eyes, the weekend he had to fly to Atlanta on 3 hours' notice for something that was definitely an emergency. When every single thing she had filed under Nobody's Perfect reorganized itself into a different folder. The correct one. The one labeled "You" were being played. She had not missed the signs. She had been given, carefully and deliberately, and with great skill, every reason not to look for them. The realization sat heavier than the photographs themselves. She found him in the hotel stairwell, 1 floor below the bridal suite. He was adjusting his cufflinks. The groom. Her groom. 55 minutes before the ceremony. adjusting his cufflinks like it was any other morning in any other life. She held out her phone, screen up, photographs visible. He looked at it. What happened in his face was not surprise. It was something she had never seen before. A micro-expression, there and gone in under a second, that was calculation rather than shock. The rapid, internal adjustment of a man who had prepared for this possibility and was now moving smoothly from one contingency plan to the next. He didn't deny it, didn't reach for her, didn't perform a single syllable of remorse. "That doesn't change anything," he said. His voice was perfectly even, perfectly calm, the same voice that had told her he loved her across restaurant tables and in quiet moments before sleep. All of it revealed now as a setting, adjustable, deployable, a tool rather than an expression. "I'm calling off the wedding," Destiny said. Marcus looked at her. Something shifted beneath the surface of his expression, not to anger, not yet, but to something older and colder underneath all the performance. The thing the performance had always been covering. "Your father's construction business," he said. And what followed was specific, detailed. The kind of detailed that only comes from careful research. Permit irregularities, inspection shortcuts, the relationships with city officials that kept certain things from being examined too closely. He named things that only someone who had been looking, deliberately and thoroughly, would know. It would be a real shame if someone started looking very carefully at all of that. Your father's age, this late in his career? Investigations like that tend to be stressful, especially when they go public. The air in the stairwell changed. "Your mother's church," Marcus continued. Same tone, same measured pace. "That after-school program she runs for neighborhood kids, the grant funding, money has to come from somewhere, Destiny. And it can go somewhere else very quickly when the right calls get made." He took one step closer, not aggressive, just enough to make the space between them smaller. "You're going to walk down that aisle in 53 minutes. You're going to smile for the photographs. You're going to say what you're supposed to say. And tomorrow morning, when this is done, we can discuss all of this like rational adults." He straightened his cuffs, looked at her one final time. The look of ownership, of a man confirming possession of something. "Today goes exactly as planned. Don't test me. You won't enjoy what happens to the people you love when you do." Then he turned and walked down the stairs, unhurried, unconcerned, with the complete ease of a man who had said what needed to be said and had no doubt about how it would land. Destiny stood in that stairwell and felt the walls close in. She couldn't call her mother. Her mother became a target the moment she was included. Her sister, her best friend, anyone Marcus could see, could name, could apply pressure to. She had no recording, no witnesses. 2 photographs sent from an untraceable address and a threat delivered in an empty stairwell against a man whose reputation had been constructed over 15 years to be more credible than any accusation a woman in a wedding dress could make on her wedding morning. She was wearing a dress that had made her mother cry with joy. She had 53 minutes. She had no options. She returned to the bridal suite, locked the door, sat down on the edge of the bed, opened her phone. She scrolled past her mother, past Imani, past her maid of honor, past her college roommate who had flown in from Seattle, past everyone who made sense, everyone who was reachable, everyone who could become a weapon against her the moment Marcus found out she had made a call. She scrolled until she reached a name saved under a single letter. J, a number she had kept for 13 years. Not because she expected anything from it. Not because she believed it connected to anything real anymore. Because deleting it had always felt like a different kind of loss. The final kind. The kind you couldn't take back. and she had never been able to bring herself to that edge. She stared at the screen. Then, because she had nothing else, and the clock was running, and she had promised herself years ago that she would not go down without reaching for something, she typed 7 words. "Come now, moo, if you still want me." She stared at them for 11 seconds. She would remember the count later. 11 seconds is both nothing and everything, depending on what you're deciding inside them. She hit send, put the phone face down on the white duvet, pressed her palms against her eyes, and cried, silently, the way you cry when you cannot afford to be heard. Because she had been holding everything together all morning, and those 7 words into the silence were the first honest thing she had done since 6:23 a.m. She told herself this was completion. A message into a dead number. A gesture into silence so she could tell herself she had tried. She told herself this changed nothing. 53 minutes away, in a glass-walled conference room 47 floors above Chicago, Jwan Park looked at his phone. He had been in this meeting for 94 minutes. 11 men in suits. $62 million on the table. The kind of negotiation that represented years of groundwork and leverage that men like this spend entire careers assembling. He looked at his phone. He read the message once. 13 years compressed into 7 words. 7 words that meant exactly one thing, and he had known for 13 years in the place he didn't examine too carefully, exactly what he would do if they ever came. He read it again. He stood up. No explanation, no apology, no acknowledgement of the $62 million or the 11 men who had gone completely still watching him rise. He walked out. His second in command, Daniel, was in the corridor. Fell into step without being asked, because he had learned over years of proximity that when Jwan Park stood up in the middle of something, you didn't ask questions. You moved. The helicopter. 2 words. Where? Jwan looked at him. The look answered the question. The venue was the kind of beautiful that made people reach for their phones before they'd found their seats. Ancient oak trees lined both sides of a manicured lawn, draped in string lights that caught the afternoon sun and scattered it across white chairs arranged in perfect rows. A floral arch at the ceremony's end, white roses and trailing greenery against the blue sky. A string quartet playing something elegant that carried on the summer air. 275 guests in their finest. Finding seats, adjusting hats, complimenting each other's outfits, seem existing in the pleasant anticipation of people about to witness something beautiful. Marcus Whitfield stood at the altar exactly as he had designed himself to stand. Composed, impressive, the portrait of a man at the apex of his story. Suit perfect, groomsman perfectly positioned, officiant reviewing his notes, everything exactly as planned. The string quartet shifted into the processional, and every head turned with the same expectation. Destiny came down the aisle on her father's arm. Raymond Williams walked beside his daughter with the careful pride of a man who had worked his whole life for this moment. His suit had been pressed 3 times this week. His hand covered hers where it rested on his arm, and he was holding it the way you hold something you know you're about to give away. Tightly, lovingly, trying to memorize the weight. Where Destiny was radiant. She was composed. She was doing the best acting of her life because she had to. Because her father could not become a target. Her mother could not become a target. And the only way to protect them was to walk this aisle looking like a woman who had chosen to be here. She did not look at Marcus's face as she approached the altar. She looked past it, at a point in the middle distance, at the empty space where a future was supposed to be assembled. The officiant had a warm, practiced voice. If anyone present knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, he said, looking out over the assembled guests, speak now, or forever hold your peace. The silence lasted 4 seconds. 4 seconds in which 275 people sat in comfortable certainty that nothing would happen, because nothing ever happened at this part, because this was the formality before the substance. And then, a sound. Not a voice, a sound. It started at the edge of hearing, a low, rhythmic thrum, the kind of sound that registers in the chest before the ears process it. A truck on a distant road. Construction somewhere beyond the garden walls. Any of the mechanical sounds a city produces constantly in the background of human events. You could almost ignore it. Then it grew, steadily, unmistakably, undeniably. It grew until it filled the sky above the garden, until it consumed the quartet's final notes, until string lights trembled and programs lifted from laps and flower arrangements shuddered. A helicopter descended over the ceremony, deliberate, unhurried, consuming the airspace with the authority of something that had decided where it was going. It landed at the edge of the garden with a force that vibrated through the ground, through the legs of chairs, through the feet of 275 people, frozen in absolute, stunned silence. The door opened. 4 men emerged, moved outward in a deliberate fan, reading the garden with the quick assessment of professionals establishing geometry. Not threatening, just clearing a path. And then the path opened. A tall Korean man stepped out. He moved through that garden the way pressure moves through a room. You felt it before you understood it. Not performed. Not announced. Just present, with a weight that bypassed intellect and landed somewhere more animal. Dark clothes, clean lines, nothing that called attention. And yet every person tracked him with the helpless attention that certain people command, simply by existing in a space. His face was still. His pace was measured. A man who arrives by helicopter to a wedding he wasn't invited to does not rush. He arrives. That is sufficient. His eyes moved forward, scanned once, found one thing, locked. Destiny. He walked the full length of that aisle. 275 people watching in complete silence. Past scattered programs, past bent grass, past groomsmen who had stepped backward without knowing they'd done it, past the officiant standing with his mouth open and no script for this. He stopped 6 feet from the altar. He looked at her, the way he had always looked at her, like she was the only fixed point in any room they shared. Like 13 years had moved around him, but never through him. At the altar, Marcus had gone the color of a man experiencing something he hadn't accounted for. Jaw locked, eyes calculating, composure still there, but beneath it, emergency configuration. Destiny stood with her father's hand under hers, and her bouquet held like something forgotten. And she looked at this face she had memorized on a rooftop and carried for 13 years in the place she didn't examine. Something happened in her chest too large for a name. He was different. Same face, sharpened by years. Same eyes, carrying weight she couldn't read yet. He held himself like a man who had made peace with what he carried. Not easily, permanently. Not the boy from the rooftop. What the boy from the rooftop had become. But she knew his face. And he was here. You called for me, he said. Not loud, not performing, speaking directly to her. Like the rest of the room was furniture. The tears came before she could stop them. He looked at her for one long moment, taking in the dress, the pearls, the bouquet. The expression that was not the expression of a woman on her wedding day. He read it the way he'd always read her, without effort, without error. Then he extended his hand. Let's go. 2 words, carrying 13 years. Destiny looked at his hand, at his face, at her father, bewildered beside her. "I'm so sorry, Daddy," she whispered. She dropped the bouquet. It hit the ground with the soft sound of something released, white petals scattering across grass. She lifted the hem of her dress, stepped down from the altar, and walked toward Jwan. Not slowly, not hesitantly, not looking back. When she reached him, when her hand slid into his and his fingers closed around it, warm and certain and solid, she felt for the first time since 6:23 a.m. like she was standing on ground that wouldn't shift. They turned to leave. "Where do you think you're going?" Marcus's voice shattered the silence. He had moved fast, faster than anyone expected, and he was in the aisle, blocking the path. His hand reaching for Destiny's arm with the reflexive entitlement of a man who had never been denied access to anything he considered his. His fingers didn't reach her. 2 of Jwan's men materialized between them with speed that made Marcus's hand stop midair. Not because anyone touched him, because his brain processed simultaneously with his hand that completing this motion was going to end in a way he was not equipped for. Marcus looked at the men. He was not a small man, not usually the least formidable person in any room. These men did not care. He looked past them at Jwan. Something passed between them. Recognition, assessment, rapid recalculation. Marcus's intelligence was telling him now, clearly and urgently, that the man holding his fiancée's hand was not a complication he had prepared for. That the men between them were not the kind whose bluff you called at a garden party. His jaw tightened, his hand lowered. Jwan held his gaze for exactly 1 moment. Not challenging, not threatening, just confirming what they both understood. Then he looked away, because Marcus Whitfield was no longer worth the attention. He turned with Destiny's hand in his and walked back up the aisle. His men fell in around them. Destiny did not look back. Not once. She felt the string lights and oak trees and white chairs and 275 faces pass on either side of her, and underneath the fear and disorientation and relief, something ancient moved through her chest, like a key turning in a lock that had been stuck for 13 years. They reached the helicopter. He helped her in, the dress requiring adjustment he handled without comment. Climbed in after her, the door closed. The engine rose. Below, Marcus Whitfield stood at the end of an aisle littered with white petals, watching the helicopter lift above the trees with fury that had nowhere to go, and no audience that believed his version of anything anymore. The helicopter touched down, and Destiny's composure broke. She had held it through everything. The photographs, the stairwell, Marcus's voice listing the people she loved like items on a checklist. The aisle, the bouquet drop, her father's face. Now, in the quiet of Jwan's penthouse with Chicago glowing through floor-to-ceiling glass, it came out at once. She paced. Her hands moved. Her voice cracked and rebuilt and cracked again. Marcus's threats, her father's permits, her mother's program, the way he had named each one in the same voice he used to say he loved her. "He'll come for them," she said, stopping to face Jwan. "His whole plan collapsed in front of everyone. Men like him don't absorb that. My family? You don't need to worry about Marcus Whitfield." He had moved toward her. Now he crouched in front of where she dropped onto the sofa, bringing himself to her level. He held out a glass of water. She took it. "I'll handle it," he said. Quiet, but no performance, a fact delivered with the certainty of someone who had handled considerably larger problems. She looked into his eyes, steady, carrying things she didn't yet know. She believed him. She nodded, pressed the cold glass against her palm, breathed. Before sunrise the next morning, Marcus Whitfield's world was gone. Not slowly, not thread by thread. Gone. With the surgical finality of someone who had been holding the complete picture for a long time and had simply been waiting for the right moment. By dawn, every piece of Jwan's quietly assembled investigation was in the hands of people who needed it. Federal contacts, investigative journalists, political figures whose careers required distance from Marcus's name the moment it became radioactive. The money laundering beneath the real estate firm. Client funds cycled through shells in 4 states, affordable housing developments that existed primarily as vehicles for cleaning money. Political donations structured to avoid disclosure. Years of documented crime dressed as civic virtue. All of it surfaced simultaneously. Controlled detonation. Marcus's phone started ringing before 6 a.m. and didn't stop. By 8, 2 partners had released distancing statements. By 10, the firm's doors were closed. By afternoon, Marcus and everyone within proximity to his operation were in custody. Destiny watched the coverage from Jwan's living room, watched Marcus's face appear beside words like indictment and fraud and conspiracy. She felt something complex. Not satisfaction exactly. Not relief exactly. Vindication laced with vertigo. The disorienting recognition of how long the lie had held. Jwan's world was nothing Destiny's life had prepared her for. She was a public school art teacher from the South Side. She believed in accountability and community, and the kind of moral clarity that comes from a life lived at ground level among real people with real stakes in each other. This life was frictionless in ways she found genuinely disorienting. Properties in multiple cities, staffed and waiting. Security so quiet, it became invisible until a door opened before she reached it. People spoke to him with deference that had weight, the relief of people for whom his satisfaction mattered in concrete ways. Rooms changed when he entered them. She watched it happen, and it never stopped being remarkable. "This is strange," she told him on the second day, Henya standing in a living room the size of her mother's entire first floor. "I need you to know, I find this genuinely strange." Something moved through his face, amusement layered over relief. "I know. I've been waiting for someone to just say it." She studied him. "When's the last time someone talked to you without performing?" He considered it. "A while." "That's a problem. I'm aware." "Good. Awareness is where we start." It didn't take long. Neither of them had ever let go of the other. 13 years of distance hadn't dissolved what they had. It had compressed it, pressurized it, made it denser. He sat beside her while she sketched, the way he'd always known how to sit with her in silence. Like silence wasn't absence, but architecture. A room they both knew. He said something one morning in the easy register of the boy from the rooftop, and she felt the distance between who he'd been and who he'd become close by a fraction. Understood the boy hadn't been lost, just buried, waiting for the one environment where he could exist without armor. He was coming undone in ways he hadn't expected. She was the only person in his adult life who spoke to him like he was simply a person. Not the name, not the empire, not the man rooms quieted for. Just Jwan. The effect of this, after 13 years of being the other thing, moved through his defenses like they were paper. But Destiny was not a woman who let things go unexamined. She was paying attention. Certain things were accumulating into questions. How had the investigation been so complete? So ready? Deployed with such precision? She found the answer on a Tuesday evening, hanging up a jacket, her fingers reaching into a breast pocket, closing around something small and wrong. A phone. Cheap. Prepaid. Not any phone she'd seen him use. She turned it on, the sent folder, the 2 photographs, the anonymous address. Sent on the morning of her wedding. She stood in that closet a very long time. Then she walked to the kitchen table, set the phone in the center, sat down, waited. He found her there. Saw the phone before he saw her face. She watched the micro-adjustment move through him. Small, contained, there and gone. He sat across from her, didn't speak first. She looked at him. Tell me I'm reading this wrong. The silence was brief, honest. You're not. How long have you been watching me? Years. The word landed without softening. You investigated Marcus, found the photographs, sent them to me anonymously, on my wedding morning. Yes. She looked at the phone, at her hands, back at him. I need to understand, she said, precise and careful, the difference between what you did and what Marcus did. Because right now, I can't find that line, and I need to find it before I can decide what any of this means. That landed. Something more exposed than she'd seen from him. Something that hadn't been managed in time. Marcus wanted to trap you, he said quietly. I wanted you to see the trap. Through manipulation, you arranged what I saw, and when I saw it to produce the outcome you wanted. You didn't call me, didn't come to my door, didn't give me the information and let me decide. You sent photographs from an anonymous address on my wedding morning and waited. She paused. Why didn't you just call me, Jwan? You had my number. The whole time. The real question. He was quiet. Because calling meant putting 13 years of silence on the table first. Walking back into your life asking you to trust me before I'd given you reason. Standing at your door, hoping you didn't close it before I finished the first sentence. Pause. I was afraid of a phone call, Destiny. I know how that sounds. She looked at him. The most feared man in Chicago. Was afraid of calling you? Yes. Something moved through her face. Not softness. The consideration of someone who has received an honest answer and is deciding what it means. He didn't reach for more words, didn't defend, sat in it. That was what kept her at the table. She looked at the phone a long time, then at him. I'm not leaving, but hear me. This is the only time. The one and only time something this significant happens before I'm told directly, by you, to my face. She held his eyes. If you ever arrange my circumstances to produce a conclusion you've decided on, if I ever find out I've been managed, even with good reasons, even with love, I will leave. Not because I stopped caring, because I can't be who I am inside something that operates that way. Clear? Clear. That wasn't a soft request. I know what it was. Clear. She held his gaze a long time, looking for performance, not finding it. Okay, then that's where we start. Her parents came on a Sunday. Destiny told them everything. Not the edited version, everything. Victor, the photographs, the stairwell. What he'd said, specifically, including the parts about her father's business and her mother's church. She watched her father's face and held his eyes through every shift. Then, Jwan, who he was now, why he'd left then, the thread he'd kept running, the helicopter. Patricia was quiet a long time. Raymond looked at Jwan with the measuring attention of a man who has spent his life protecting one person and is deciding if the man across from him understands that weight. "Thank you," Raymond said finally, "for taking care of my daughter." Jwan nodded. Raymond set his hands on the table. "Sunday dinners. You want to be in this family, you show up every Sunday. Sit at this table. Answer what you're asked. Eat what Patricia cooks." "Yes, sir." "And you look after my daughter in the way she says she wants to be looked after, not the way you decide she needs." The distinction landed exactly as intended. Same language Destiny had used. Same accountability. "Yes, sir." Patricia reached across the table and placed her hand over Destiny's. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Later. After her parents had gone and the evening settled into something quiet, Destiny found Jwan on the terrace. He was looking at the city. Chicago spreading in every direction, all of it. The South Side, Auburn, Gresham. The rooftop where two teenagers made promises under a fractured July sky. She stood beside him. Neither spoke. The silence was full. "Tell me something true," she said. It had become a thing between them, small, consistent. The only material worth building with, he thought. "I checked your number every 4th of July, every year, to make sure it still existed." She absorbed it. "Every year. Every year? 13 times you could have just called." "I know." A pause. The number still exists," she said. He looked at her. "In case you needed to know, for next year." Something happened in his face. Something that came from underneath the surface, from the boy on the front porch who had laughed involuntarily over a plate of jollof rice and had spent the years since carrying the weight of someone who had learned to stop expecting warmth. He didn't contain it. Let it be visible. The bravest thing he did. Not the helicopters. Not the empire. This. Letting something true show without managing it first. He didn't say anything. He reached over and took her hand. Certain. Warm. Solid. She let him. They stood there above the city, hand in his. Lights below. Night above. The rooftop still standing miles south and 13 years behind them. Carrying promises that had taken the longest possible road to find each other. This was not an ending. This was a beginning. Not built on grand promises or comfortable fictions, or the lie that love alone is enough. Built on two people who had been interrupted at the start of something real, had lived entirely different lives, and had found each other again on the other side. Choosing, with full knowledge of the cost and complexity and work ahead, to try. The boy on the rooftop had promised to come back. He took 13 years and arrived by helicopter, which was not how either of them had pictured it. But the thing about a real promise is it doesn't specify the method. Only the arrival. And she, who had typed 7 words into silence expecting nothing, she had kept his number for 13 years. Not hoping, not waiting, just refusing, quietly, to cut the last thread. Some promises don't carry expiration dates. Some people don't either. The question was never whether they would find their way back. The question, the one that would take the rest of their story to answer, was what kind of people they would choose to be now that they had. If this story stayed with you, drop a comment and where exactly you're watching from. Please kindly share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more. And if you've ever kept a number you couldn't bring yourself to delete, you already know exactly what this story is about.